Welcome to the Christian Adoption Coaching Podcast, where couples come for the guidance and tools to build a family through adoption, while also receiving the continued support and education after finalization. All of this is anchored in the truth, beauty, and goodness of our faith. With adoption coaches Stacy Sanger and Shannon Slattery as your hosts, you will learn how to gain the confidence, tools, and clarity you will need as you build your family through adoption and strengthen it through all aspects of your lives. Because together, we make a family.
Hi, my name is Shannon, and I am one of the founders of Christian Adoption Coaching. And this is the other founder, Stacy. And today we are going to start our very first podcast.
Yay.
Yes. We are super excited to get started with this. I'm an adoptive mom of 3. She's an adoptive mom of 5, but I'm a mother of 5, so we're even. It all works out. Stacey, would you tell us a little bit about your story and why you wanted to adopt?
Absolutely. We started off in our marriage not necessarily planning to adopt, but to, it's always been a consideration, but we started off just planning on doing it the normal way. And after several years, we found out that wasn't going to happen. So we thought about it and prayed about it. And just one day we came to each other and said, I think we need to adopt. So we went to our local Catholic charities here in Kansas and asked them to help us start the process. And after that, we got our home study done. We got our profile album ready. And then after that, we were, back then it wasn't on computer, it was on just a picture album.
Mm-hmm.
And once you got that all done, you were on the shelf, is what it was called. On the shelf. And so when you're on the shelf, that means that when a birth mom or a birth dad came into the offices, they went through the books on the shelf and they picked who they wanted. And about 3 or 4 weeks after we got on the shelf, we had one situation come where the baby was already born. She was premature by about 2.5 months, I believe, if I remember correctly. And they were asked if we would consider meeting with the biological parents and going up to the hospital. And at that point in time, we were pretty young, and finances were kind of a stress, so we decided to decline that opportunity, which was very scary because we were like,
I can't even imagine.
Yeah, we were like, oh, so is this the one that was chosen for us? And then we're telling God, no, we can't handle this. And so that was really scary. But just a few weeks later after that, we were called back into the office to meet with a young woman. And because she had picked our album and she was interviewing either 2 or 3, I can't remember, families. And we ended up getting a phone call after that, and we were a match. Yes. And she my son's father ended up picking us, and that was in April, which is kind of a long match because it was started in April, and he wasn't born until July 1st. So we knew.
You knew for a long time.
Yeah.
You could prepare.
Yeah, we could prepare, which isn't really. I don't know statistically, but it isn't the normal situation. Mm-hmm. We were allowed to take time to prepare and get ready, but we also had time to ponder and worry. So It was kind of a double-edged sword.
That makes sense.
So in July, my son was born, and that just begins the whole process. We adopted 4 more times after that, and they were all 4 completely different stories.
Well, your story is different than mine. When I was growing up, I had all kinds of problems, and I was told I wouldn't have kids. So when I was getting married, my husband and I were like, we're going to have to adopt. Well, 2 births later, my husband, when I mentioned when are we going to adopt, was like, we have 2 kids, we don't need to adopt. And so I still wanted to adopt. I guess I watched Little Orphan Annie too much, or maybe the fact that one of my cousins was adopted on my 4th birthday. Adoption was like really, really ingrained in my brain. So I just started praying about it, and then Mark came to me and said, hey, I think we're supposed to adopt. So we decided that we were going to go international. So we started on our international journey, and then we met somebody who told us about a little girl. And they said, oh my goodness, you need this little girl, perfect for your family. So my husband told me, why don't you go call find and see if we can become foster parents, because she was in the foster care. And I was like, hot dog, like, you don't have to tell me twice. So I called, and we started taking classes. We were like so blessed. We even had one-on-one classes. Like, that's kind of unheard of, but when God's in it, things happen.
Right.
And so in the middle of it, she was adopted, and I was crushed. So we finished the classes and thought, maybe we're just supposed to learn the information, because the foster to adopt classes and becoming a foster parent, the classes were really, really good. Long story short, they came and they measured my house, and our social worker said, too bad your house is too small. And I was like, what? And he said, too bad your house is so small. And we're talking like a yard, like a square yard. And I said, why? Why do you say our house is too small? You're just measuring it to write it down. And she said, I had 2-year-old twins and a 3-year-old I wanted to place with you. And I was like, oh, okay. So she left, and I started crying. And my husband was like, or my daughter, who was probably 11 at the time, said, what's wrong with Mom? And my husband said, oh, she's trying to save the world again. And I asked him, I said, did you pick out Ashley? And he's like, no. And I go, did you pick out Jeremiah? And he's like, no. And I'm like, how do you know those aren't our babies? And he rolls his eyes at me, the whole eye roll. And he said, what if we call him and see if we get a bigger house, if we can have the babies. So, long story short, we got 2.5-year-old twins and a 3-year-old.
And a new house.
And a new house. So within not 5 days from that, it took a few months to get that. But we got the house, got it certified, all within 5 days of getting the new house. And then we were told we wouldn't get our boys for a week, so we got them 3 hours later. The twins, and then we got the 3-year-old the next week. And so
Amazing.
They're full biological brothers. So yes, our story a little different, but we both came up with 5 kids.
And it
exact same
allows
way.
us to know the whole gamut of, or not the whole, but a very big chunk of the
2/3
adoption.
of it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And so what prompted you to start Christian adoption coaching?
Actually, I don't know that it was actually the Christian adoption coaching idea completely, but I'd always been interested in sharing. All of our adoptions are open in some way. And I'd always wanted to share with people, because everybody I've ever said to that, not everybody, but most people that I've said that to are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how you do that. That's so terrifying. You are an amazing person. And I'm like, no. This is just a natural course. I mean, things just took care of itself. I mean, I was scared the first time that we even approached the idea. It's terrifying to allow somebody else to have a potential title that you're supposed to have, you know. And it's also, I mean, just the whole scary thing that they're gonna come and take them or something like that. So anyway, I wanted to share that. And I started creating a website, and then I met a lady at our Catholic family conference that did coaching, and I fell in love with coaching, and I thought, that's perfect to teach people how to have an open adoption, or at least a working relationship, through coaching. I mean, what an amazing gift. So then I was talking to this woman that I met, and she's like, okay, you have it. You have all the pieces together. Why aren't you doing anything? I mean, you've already started a little bit of a website. You're dabbling in all kinds of things. And I'm like, sorry, but God's telling me I need a partner. And I don't know who that partner is. I know that I want to have a website. I know I want to do coaching. I know I want it to be Catholic. I know all these things, but God keeps saying you're waiting for your partner. And she's like, well, I can't argue with him. So Well, long story short, Shannon we live in different towns, and Shannon's husband had gotten pretty sick.
Yeah. So my husband had colon cancer, and it was so funny. She calls me and said, "Hey, are you at chemo?" Because our chemo was in the town she lived in. And I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "I'm bringing you coffee." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll be out in a few minutes." So we sit out in her truck, and we're just talking, and she's telling me that she has a meeting here in a few minutes for coaching. I'm like, "For what?" So she's telling me her dreams, and this is my best friend. So of course, I was excited for her. I'm like, "Oh my goodness, that sounds so exciting." And I was so happy for her. I'm like, "That sounds so much fun. I would love to do something like that." Having no idea that she'd been praying for a partner. And then we kind of, go ahead.
I think then the conversation went into how Mark was going to probably go on disability, and you were soul searching as to what your career could be.
What am I going to do when I grow up?
Right. Basically, because we've both been stay-at-home moms. And she was looking back. I mean, we were both teachers by trade, but she was looking at going back into the workforce. And being the breadwinner for their family. And so she was talking about that. And then somehow we came around to the thing where the conversation I had with Sterling, one of the coaches I work with, and then I told Sterling that I'm looking for a partner. I don't know where that partner is, and I'm just going rambling on and on and on like I'm doing now. And then I turn around and look at her, and she's like,
"Hello, hello." I laughed so hard. She's like, "Well, we need to pray about it." And I go, "Well, I don't know about you, but you said you've been praying for a while, and I know I have been praying for a while. And if this is where God's leading us, then this is where we need to go." So we both laughed, and God has just taken the path, and He has made it very clear that this is the path that we're supposed to do, that we get to help pre-adoptive people go through the process. We will help people for the pre-adoption. We will help with the the home study, and we have help with the what's the video? I didn't have to do one.
The profile.
I didn't have
profile video, or there's a profile video that a lot of people do, but also the profile web page.
Yes.
That a lot of people do, which I didn't have to do either. I mean, it was a book when we did it.
And mountains of paperwork. I called it the paperwork pregnancy.
Mm-hmm. And I think we both found when we prepared for adoption, for the most part, they let you know. They let you know that these kids, not in my case, that these kids will have a few questions, they'll have a few issues, or they will be coming from hard places, like Shannon's kids. But for the most part, they painted a fairly rosy picture. The biggest red flag that I got was, "Oh my gosh, you want to adopt somebody out of your race?" And so that was like, they were huge. They were like, "Okay, what would you handle? How would you handle if somebody was bigoted to your child? How would you handle if somebody was rude? How would you handle if your kid had trouble interacting?" I mean, they were a million questions. But other than that, they acted like this was going to be a cakewalk. And we both have amazing families and amazing kids. A lot of what we want to share with people are just things that we've learned.
Absolutely.
Through our interactions with our families.
Which leads us to our post-adoption help. And that's what we're working on. There's all kinds of amazing things that happen with adoption. There's also a lot of hard things that nobody wants to talk about. And when you talk about it, you feel like you're all alone. And I was really blessed when we moved here and we started the adoption process. Our husbands had gotten to be friends, and they introduced us, and obviously it worked.
Yeah. Well, we were kind of forced friends.
We were forced friends. It's kind of one of those things we didn't have a choice but to be friends. But,
that's okay.
It worked out in our favor.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yes. And so one of the things that we're really passionate about is helping people after they have adopted also.
Yes. Providing them with a support group to bounce things off of, providing them with the guidance and the coaching from us. And we are going to provide that service either in a group setting on video, where we actually have meetings together, and we address, you can either sit in the background and just listen, or people bring up issues or celebrations that they have, and we help coach them through it. Or we even offer services where we can work with couples, or we can work with mom, or we can work with dad. And even to the extent, I mean, if we had to, family,
Absolutely.
via usually video, and provide them some of the guidance that we wish we would have had, that we
Absolutely.
kind of muddled through. And although we were successful at it, it just kind of stunk not having a support system there.
Well, we were lucky because we had each other, to be honest with
Right.
you. But not everybody's quite so blessed. We are very, very pro adoption if adoption is what God is calling you to do. And so we're very excited about that. And we have, between our 10 kids, all 10 of them are super excited about us doing this. None of them are like, oh my goodness, don't talk about me. I think they will all be like, hey, that was me they're talking about today.
Because
our-
their stories are so amazing.
Yeah.
And they've done so well with the whole circumstances.
So my children range from 25. I have a 25-year-old daughter, a 22-year-old son, and those are the biological ones. And then we skip down to 16 and 15-year-old twins, and those obviously are my adopted sons. But if somebody asks me how many children I have, I say I have 5 children because I do have 5 children.
Yep, absolutely. That is another thing that we would like to cover too, is some of the things that people struggle with when some of the myths about adoption, or some of the stupid comments that people make about adoption just out of ignorance. I mean,
Yeah.
just out of pure ignorance. We like to cover stuff like that. And in our pre-adoption, we also tend to cover some of the things that prepare you for meeting your child, or preparing you for the first year, helping you with attachment issues. Some of it comes really naturally, but some of it you have to be exceptionally intentional about.
Absolutely.
Exceptionally.
I wish I would have known most of this stuff when I got 3 babies overnight.
Yeah.
It probably would have helped me. But I was very, very blessed because I had an amazing husband and 2 older kids that were amazing. And when we had 3 little monsters running around the house, we all just herded them.
That's right. That's right.
We just heard them.
I guess since you talked about your kids, I probably should talk about mine, because
They'll be
just
jealous.
Yeah, they'll be a little jealous, and they're just as cool, if not cooler. But
Whatever.
I have a 23-year-old and 2 21-year-olds. They're not twins, but they kind of argue and love on each other like twins.
Yes.
And then I have an 18-year-old and I have a 15-year-old. All of them came to us privately, but 3 came to us as infants. One of them was 9 months old before she was able to come live in our home. And then the last one of the twins, was 3 when he came to live with us. And like I mentioned before, they're all very unique adoptions, and their openness is very different. And it's been an exciting story that we've gone through, and we've learned so much about ourselves as parents through the adoption process.
Absolutely. One thing that my adoption is closed. And so one time her 18-year-old was talking to my boys. He wasn't 18. He was probably 8. And he said something about going to see his birth mom. And my kids were like, what? Why do we get to do that? And that's a topic that we're going to be addressing at another podcast, because that was really hard. And it was a very long process to finally get it through their heads. Why ours is a closed adoption and theirs aren't.
And why that's okay.
Yes. And
Yeah.
we just take it one step at a time. Some of her kids are able to see their families, and some aren't. I mean, all of them. Every single situation is just as unique as every single child.
Absolutely.
And we're here. That's one of the things that we're excited about. We're here to walk through that with you, help you to understand, to grow, and become the best family that you can. I think that's one of the most exciting things.
It is. we're horribly excited to walk the journey with our couples and with their families. We just think this is just a phenomenal thing, a gift that we've been given to be able to share our gifts and talents in this way. And through the internet just lets us reach even further out and to offer it to even more people. And we're super excited.
Super excited. So, let me see. I have a list of questions.
It's our intention to do this podcast weekly.
Do you see that fly?
I do.
I'm sorry, y'all.
It keeps dive bombing us.
This fly is like trying to kill us. Maybe it's somebody with a little microphone.
Ooh.
Maybe we're being spied on.
Or maybe
Spy
our
Kids.
sent it.
Spy Kids. That's right. Watch Spy Kids
Just to make
too
sure.
many times.
Just to make sure we aren't saying anything nasty about them. So we hope to reach out to you through this podcast. And we will have a membership room where you are able to become a member. And we have sessions throughout the week where we address certain topics. We invite people to come and get coached and to help us walk them through steps and kind of figure out what's inside themselves that they need to look at and then to come up with a solution. We share our own solutions too. We also have a website.
Yes. www.
Dot.
Christianadoption-coaching.com. That dash is kind of important.
Yeah. At the time, that's what we had to pick. But that's okay.
That's right.
It's been fun.
Absolutely. Did you know old people can learn things? Because we have learned a lot.
Speaking of learning, we are on all the social media platforms, and that has been a learning curve, but you can find us there, and hopefully we will help you be informative and yet also slightly entertaining because, we are old and we have to laugh about it or we'd be crying, literally. Because this is hard, but it's very important. So, Is that it?
I think we got it.
I think we
finished the first episode of our podcast.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you, Jesus.
That just gave me chills.
We hope you have an extraordinarily blessed day, and we hope to see you on one of our social media sites. And please like, subscribe, whatever you got to do. Maybe you're not interested in adoption, but you know somebody else who is. Give them our information, and we greatly appreciate it. Blessings, everyone.
Love you. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Christian Adoption Coaching Podcast. Come join us at the Christian Adoption Coaching community at www.christianadoption-coaching.com. That's christianadoption-coaching.com. Have a blessed day.